Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's delve into some issues here of importance to all of us in Louisiana. Very pleased to have a special guest joining us. He's an investigative reporter based in the Capitol for the Pelican Institute. Fergus Hodgson is joining us, and Fergus, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Fergus, you've been doing a lot of investigative research into this oil moratorium and how it affects all of us here in Louisiana and the real impact. And how bad has this official and then unofficial moratorium been for the state of Louisiana?
Well, it depends who you talk to. One estimate from Joe Mason, a professor at LSU, was that 9,000 jobs have been lost based on this moratorium. And you rightly point out that it's not actually an official moratorium still. Recently there was one permit given out for drilling, but the average from past years has been 7 per month. So the reality is that there is still a moratorium by way of the permitting process.
And Fergus, is that prudent, careful deliberation on these permits by the federal government, or is it more of an agenda that the federal government is pursuing to slow down the drilling in the Gulf?
Great question. I mean, you would think that if it were prudent that it would have been passed through the legislation, but in fact no legislation has been passed since the oil spill, and therefore it's just been done through the executive branch, and that suggests it's not so prudent or doesn't have the best wishes of the public.
Senator Landrieu made a big display of holding up a nominee that she said was meant to really send a message. She didn't really have a problem with the nominee. She was just trying to get this permitting process on track, and then she released a nominee with the sort of supposed bargain that then the Obama administration was going to relax the permitting process and speed things up. Then the Interior Secretary came down here, and I guess we really got nothing.
That's right. It became more of a, I guess, an obligation to meet with people, but no promises or nothing really came out of it other than frustration, I guess. And I've posted work on that on the Pelican Institute site.
Yeah. So as far as the oil industry being so important to Louisiana, you say 9,000 jobs, possibly?
Perhaps more. That was a very conservative estimate. Right. And Joe Mason used I think it's the Bureau of Economic Statistics. I'm not sure the federal agency. He used their own tools to make that study. He said he could have been much more generous with his analysis.
But with the permitting as slow as it is, that figure is likely to grow, right? And how many of those jobs do you think we might get back ever?
Actually, there's another point I want to add to that, because permitting is just one side of the process. There's the leasing too. So first companies purchase a 9 square mile area of ocean to survey, and then they request a permit to delve into it. And in both regards, we don't really know what is going to happen in the near future. There may be no more lease sales until 2012. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Resource Management, and I can't remember the last one, but they had a meeting right here near the airport about 2 weeks ago.
Did you attend that meeting?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And what did you find out there?
Well, the supplementary environmental impact statement has begun the process, but that process is a year long, so there won't actually be a statement until December of 2011. And if they follow that process, there won't be another lease sale until May 2012. And that'll make 2011 the first year since the 60s that we won't have had a lease sale. So every lease, as far as I know, is about 5 years long. That means every year we go without one, about 20% are being turned over or lost. And in fact, the vast majority of those areas of ocean are still open for lease. So yeah, there are two sides of it. One is that the leases are not available, or where they will be available is up in the air, and then the permitting is subject to much greater regulations. So, and both sides is being slowed down. Yeah, in terms of precise numbers of jobs, I think that's a simplistic and difficult number to come up with, but I think we all understand.
Let's just say it has had a major negative impact on our economy.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Exactly, and already some rigs have gone offshore.
Right.
And actually at that event that I went to, there was some sort of engineer or some specialist who consults with companies about whether they should buy leases, and he has said yes, that he's looking to move offshore.
Fergus, what about the money that BP has pumped in through the cleanup operations and all that? How much has that mitigated the economic loss, you think?
I don't think it has a lot, actually. I mean, this is another area I wanted to touch upon, that when this first happened, there was a claim of $20 billion to be given out, but the fact is that's not going to happen. And since that time, only
why is that not going to happen?
Well, firstly, BP only put about, I think, $4 billion into a fund available, so they didn't put up $20 billion to start off with. And two, that, well, so far they've only paid $1.9 billion in compensation. So the likelihood that, considering they've paid less than 10% of their claim so far, that suggests that they're never going to get to anything like $20 billion.
Right, so it was mostly PR as opposed to actual results.
Yeah, I wrote about that at the time, that the actual meaning of it didn't seem to be clear. Like, there wasn't a $20 billion fund, and there were not payments going out at a rate that would lead to $20 billion. It was just a public claim, yeah.
Let's talk about some of your other areas of research, and I find it fascinating that, and all this work is at the website at the Pelican Institute, but you're also looking into higher education in our state, and there's been a big budget battle as to how higher education is going to fare, how many jobs are going to have to be cut. Right. You've been looking into some of these figures. What have you found out?
A lot. Well, firstly, the actual cut has only been about 4% in the last 2 years, and people forget that since after Katrina, there was a huge expansion of about 25% to the funding of higher education. So there is a projected cut, I think of around 20% over the next year or two, but it would only be a return to what we were before. Additionally, perhaps more interesting in terms of our recent research has been the uncovering of just the graduation rates across the board and the admission standards. So these are troubling to say the least. So firstly, the universities across the Louisiana system have a graduation rate of about a third. So about a third of the students that enter as freshmen graduate within 6 years.
And Fergus, how does that compare to other state systems? Yeah. And are we getting the results that we really should be getting as taxpayers?
No, I mean, that it puts a big question as to why people are paying for this, because the national average is around 60%. And I think the average in the South is, I think, 53, 55%. So we're well below both the national average and the average of the South. And
why is that?
Yeah, the key reason, which the study I'm referring to is from a former legislator and professor in South Carolina, and he says that the key reason is that we are letting just too many people in. We've not given oversight to the university. That we've not overseen who they're taking in. So if they're being paid by per student on a per student basis, just bring more people in.
Right.
And in fact, even LSU admits about 1 in 5 of its students from the bottom from the bottom half of the high school class, and other universities are taking more than half their students from the bottom half of their class. So it depends. You know, maybe we want to have every single student going to university, but obviously that's not working out. Those people are not prepared to graduate. And
let me ask you this part of it. My point for years has been that Louisiana has too many colleges and universities, that there's too much in bureaucracy, that there are too many boards, that there's too much for the population of Louisiana. If I'm not mistaken, Florida, with a population 4 times as great as Louisiana, has fewer colleges and universities. So do you think we could possibly consolidate some of these campuses?
Yeah, well whether we could or should, that's another question, but obviously they're not performing well. So Southern, for example, has a graduation rate of 8%. How can we justify that university? It seems perplexing to me. And the author of the study also pointed out that the 2-year colleges, the technical schools, they don't have many of the frills which make the process so much more expensive. They don't have tenure, they don't have athletics departments, they don't have all these academic ranks. So if we just diverted people or like closed down the large universities into the community colleges or 2-year colleges, we'd be saving a huge amount of money.
The admissions criteria actually needs to be raised significantly. Is that true?
Well, it already is being raised, but it's in a very incremental or gradual process, and these won't go into effect until I think 2012 and 2014, and it seems like a very drawn-out process. Like, we need to save money right now. Obviously, we're facing multiple billion-dollar shortfall.
Right, and if these cuts are made in higher ed, do you think maybe they're cuts that need to be made? I mean, do you think they're cuts that aren't going to have a negative impact since there is duplication, since there does seem to be waste?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and I think it points to a bigger problem, actually, that right now the governor has very limited areas of discretion where he can cut, and it suggests that I guess the bargaining perhaps on behalf of the state with other departments has been very lax and has meant that they're locked into long-term contracts and have no way to get out of them. So that just means higher education is sort of like, it's available, you know, to cut on.
And that's really where a lot of the cuts have been made, as well as healthcare. And I know people are up in arms about it. Now, Fergus, the Pelican Institute is having an event coming up. Tell our viewers about that, if you could.
We have Rob Bradley, who is the founder and chief executive of the Institute for Energy Research, and he's giving a presentation. We're having a luncheon in New Orleans. It's the title is Energy Policy, and how energy policy hurts the United States and Louisiana. And so yeah, it's a 1.5 hour event. There'll be plenty of time for questions, and also when it comes down, we'll get to meet the Pelican Institute staff. If people want to go to our website, pelicaninstitute.org, they can register there.
And it's going to be Friday, December 10th?
That's correct, yeah.
And it's going to be a luncheon, so I guess starting
at 12 to 1:30, yeah.
All right. Fergus, thanks. Appreciate it. We'll be looking forward to learning more about your research on the website, and we'll see you at the luncheon. All right, coming up next, another guest. We're focusing more on how this oil spill is impacting our economy and what's going on as far as coastal restoration. That's next right here on Louisiana Business Spotlight.